Welcome in, everybody, to another year of UFL Weekly. I am Kyle Krajewski, joined, as always, by Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Beautiful, Zach Cole. Zach, welcome to 2026, entering a new UFL season, 2 weeks away from kickoff. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. We have a lot of changes to discuss. I'm pretty excited to get into that and break it all down with you. We seem to be I don't know about you, we seem to be flying through this springtime here, and we're already rapidly approaching. I see we have 2 weeks until kickoff. It seems like it's flying to me. So I'm really excited that this is counting down, and I'm excited to be here for
Yeah,
another season
so
with
I
you,
guess
man.
if you are new watching us or new joining in, we are UFL Weekly. Previously, this is several seasons ago, previously XFL Weekly, now doing obviously the UFL thing.
Mhm.
And we'll be coming at you every week here. Basically, as the season, these next 2 weeks, kind of previewing the season. And in season, you can expect us to be doing some game previews, some game recaps, and basically just all season long talking all things UFL. But yes, as of right now, 2 weeks until kickoff. We have March 27th as our kickoff date of this 2026 UFL season. And this offseason, I think, represented one of the biggest structural shift in this young league's history.
Mhm.
Outside of the USFL XFL merger, creating the UFL, I think this past offseason
Mhm.
kind of shifted everything into basically what I'd call like this next gear of what we'll be seeing for the future of this league.
Yeah, I think one of the key things this offseason, and I was going to mention it before, I'm still, regardless, going to have the Freudian slip where I call it the XFL probably a couple times, but it actually almost feels like I was going to mention to you that the league is trying to move away from that XFL kind of
Yeah,
format that we saw for the last couple years. Obviously, with the merger with the USFL and the XFL, there were some bumps, there had to be some continuation from the two leagues. But we could see this year they are kind of going clean slate. They're going, this is the UFL. This is a new league. It's its own separate entity now. And as we'll get into a couple of these things here, I think even lead more to just that point where this is the UFL and they're trying to establish their identity as the spring league, not a conglomerate of old leagues. It's its
yeah,
own
and I
separate thing
guess
now.
just to quickly touch on it, I think a large part of that is the shift away from conferences. It's no longer USFL versus XFL, uh,
Mhm.
and I think now it's just one league of eight, basically all competing throughout the season, and best four make it to the playoffs. But also kind of shifting away from that conference, but also I guess introducing their own teams. No longer just four from or four. It was I guess it was technically five from XFL, three from USFL. But now it is essentially four from the previous regimes and essentially four new ones. Technically, I guess like, some of these are
Mhm.
rebrands, but we'll get into that. Basically, for 2026, the league kind of announced basically a huge new strategic direction, as we'll kind of delve into for the rest of this little chat here, with the emphasis on innovation. Some new rule changes. I think we'll see new rules every year. Basically, changing how the game is played, trying to introduce a little bit new format, a little bit more fun into the spring side of all this. But with a clear intent, at
Mhm.
least what we saw this past off season with the rule changes, kind of bringing a clear intent to increase some scoring, bringing some different scoring opportunities, and increase that entertainment value. We love watching football, but it's even better when that football is good.
Yeah, just a quick points on couple quick points on that. It felt like the old format with the USFL and the XFL sides kind of felt like I don't know, like almost like an all-star
Hmm.
game where you had like a Western Conference and an Eastern Conference, and this really kind of just creates unity for the league, I think. And as you mentioned, the emphasis on innovation is pretty cool because we've always talked about this has kind of been a testing ground for different rule changes and different things that we could see adapted in other leagues, potentially that's college football, the NFL, those different sorts of things. So it's cool to see that they're kind of finding their identity as a league, the UFL is, and that they're leaning into it a little bit. And I also think it's pretty cool that they're trying to increase the scoring and just get more people attracted to this concept of spring football. I think it's a great concept in theory, and I think that obviously we love it, and people who are listening to us probably love it, but they need to try to expand it to a wider audience. And I think that that's kind of what these changes are gauged towards.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to. I mean, we're obviously watching a yearly shift in this league, trying to really establish its
Mhm,
footprint here in the spring in our spring sport viewing pleasure. Um, let's talk new teams.
mhm.
Um, this past season, this off season, we saw some expansion, some rebrands. I say expansion; it was more just a loss of a few teams with some new franchises kind of coming in and taking places. Just to highlight, we've lost three teams, so we can hang up the banners for these three teams: the Memphis Showboats, uh, UFL Weekly favorite, Michigan Panthers,
Boats,
Zach's old
baby,
team,
boats.
and the San Antonio Brahmas. Um, three teams that did not make the cut. Um, Zach, that means we've got to find you a new team this year, and we've got to find a new UFL Weekly team.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I'm going into the season as a free agent. I think I'll make my choice after a couple weeks. I got to see some of these teams in action, and I'll go from there. So I'm leaving it up in the air. I don't want to plant my flag too early at this point. I feel like it's still a young league, and I can get
Oh
away with
yeah,
that. If this was like baseball or the NFL or something, I'd be getting booed left and right. Like, oh, you know these teams, but I'll wait a little bit. And as a show, I think we need to wait a little bit and find
yeah.
out who our
We
new
we fell
boats are
in
going to
love with
be.
the boats. Really towards the midseason of last year, but I think we'll find our stride a little
Yeah,
bit, potentially a little earlier. I think we'll find a fun team here to root for as a UFL Weekly team.
I think
Um,
so.
so we lost those three, and the three teams kind of coming in to take over for them. We have the Columbus Aviators, the Louisville Kings, and the Orlando Storm. Three new locations for the UFL. Dipping into Florida, got some Louisville action, and coming back up north, kind of shifting, basically bringing Michigan over into Ohio here with Columbus. Um, but Ohio is
Mhm,
a huge football state. Something else to note that I don't
mhm,
have in the notes here. There was a huge emphasis on the UFL this offseason to kind of bring in or draw local talent, local, I guess, big names to, I guess, these local teams. So Columbus kind of drawing from the Ohio schools, the Ohio universities, the Ohio University, even Louisville, uh, Orlando getting some Florida teams, even, I mean, Birmingham. There was a real emphasis on bringing local known talent. I mean, think Birmingham. People go to it's a state full of Bama University fans. So there was an emphasis on bringing those, I guess, those Alabama players to Birmingham or keeping them in the area. And we'll see that as a common
mhm,
thread here as we talk, most likely next week when we give a full season preview, as there are a lot of local legend names, even coaching these teams. But we also had two rebrands.
mhm,
The Arlington Renegades are now the Dallas Renegades, kind of shifting into the big name team. And the Houston Roughnecks, they came in. It was weird. I think we touched on this when the USFL XFL merger happened. The Houston Gamblers became the Houston Roughnecks for the UFL, but now have shifted back to Houston
mhm.
Gamblers. So we have the Gamblers back here. So we saw those two rebrands take place as well.
The Roughnecks didn't bring him too much luck, so like,
All right,
let's go
let's
with
go
the other
back. I will say
one.
though, it's bringing in
Yeah, it
some cool branding too. I think the Gamblers is the way to go.
absolutely. I agree. I mean, we commented on it a couple times last year. We had so much like red and blue in the league, so it's cool to see that with the Storm, we got some different colors, and with Louisville, and even the Aviators are red and blue, but they're different reds and blues. So it's cool from a branding standpoint to see some of those other colors in there. Should give the league a little bit of a pop. I think one interesting thing to look at, I'm looking at a map over here to my left, is just how kind of Eastern focused the UFL has been. When we think back to the XFL, we had an LA team, we had
Yeah,
a Seattle team. It
it's
was
in all
kind of
four
like
corners
all over the
essentially.
map, and that's yeah, and for a league that's kind of got an emphasis on money management and on financial um, constrictions, I think that this is a really intelligent way to go about formatting the league and specifically choosing these different expansion areas. I think it would have been great to have seen them maybe keep the 8 and expand to 10 or something like that, but strictly from a money management standpoint, this is a great way to refresh the league but also keep it local, and still keep it, I say local, but they're spread across like 10 different states, but keep it kind of within a region and kind of centralized. And for our sake, for the fans' sake, we want to see the UFL keep going. So this is kind of the most logistic way to go about doing that from just a money standpoint and from keeping all these teams, travel costs, that kind of stuff down to a
Yeah,
minimum.
I think there's an emphasis on cost savings. We're not sending a bunch of players to Seattle for a week.
Mhm.
Um, as much as I'd love to see the Sea Dragons make a return, or at least a team return to Seattle, I think right now their focus is let's figure this thing out, and then we'll kind of expand this nationwide. Um, so I think there were rumblings last year of Seattle returning, or the expansion kind of dipping back into the West Coast. But right now, it really seems um, that they've kind of established their footprint here on the east/southern coast here. And Zach, I now notice that you have a network disruption. So allow me to, you know what? I'm going to shift it here uh, into the next round here. Um, cracking up at literally staring at the screen, telling me that Zach has zero network connection. There he is. Uh, all right. Head coaches. We highlighted which teams are now established into the UFL for this upcoming season. Who's coaching them? Right off the bat, we've got the Birmingham Stallions with new head coach AJ McCarron. AJ McCarron, former UFL quarterback for the St. Louis Battlehawks, steps in for his first head coaching role, taking over a championship caliber franchise. This is a Birmingham team that has won several spring football championships here in the last few years.
All right, so our next team is the Columbus Aviators, and Kyle, you alluded to earlier, the Aviators are kind of looking to tap into that Ohio heritage, that Ohio personnel, all that good stuff that comes with Ohio football, and they're doing so even with their head coach Ted Ginn Jr., who is an alumni of the Ohio State University, and it's a familiar name to football fans. Played a ton of years in the league with a bunch of different teams, 14 seasons to be exact, and even though this is his first professional coaching role, I do expect to see him again bring in some of that talent and kind of sway some of these guys to maybe think about playing in Columbus this season. So I think it's a great move, and for a young franchise like Columbus here, if it works out, awesome. It could give them a head start. If it doesn't, then in a couple years it could be back to the drawing board. Either way, it feels like a great move to me.
Next up, we've got here the Dallas Renegades bringing in Rick Newhazel, former Colorado, Washington, and UCLA head coach, stepping in to replace Bob Stoops here. Um, New Hazel is not new to the spring football scene. He was in 2019 the head coach of the AAF Arizona Hotshots, uh, bringing in a little bit of uh, not to say he had a lot of spring football experience, but bringing in his head coaching experience here into Dallas.
Yeah, before I just hit DC, Kyle, people may know that last name, New Hazel, just because his son Jerry took over as the
Oh,
UCLA
that's
offensive
right.
coordinator halfway through the season last year. Beat Penn State, little blonde Beach Boy action going on. He's got a pretty cool vibe. I'm a big fan of his, but not to belabor that point. Next up is the DC Defenders, who do kind of boast an advantage here. They are the one team in the league that's bringing back a continuity hire. They are returning their head coach, Shannon Harris, who won the championship with the team last year. So, really kind of a leg up. He knows what he's doing. He's in a good spot. The team respects him, team knows him, can ball for him. So, it's a nice advantage for DC for sure, bringing back their guy.
Next up here for the Houston Gamblers, we have Kevin Sumlin, former Texas A&M and Houston head
Mhm.
coach. Uh, Actually, previously coached the USFL Gamblers, so he's just kind of stepping right back into the new name, the new rebranded Houston Gamblers here in the UFL. And he's got his established Texas football credibility. Again, Houston head coach from '08 to 2011 and Texas A&M head coach 2012 to 2017, returning for the Gamblers.
Yeah, familiar name with Sumlin. For Louisville, another familiar name for people of the Louisville area, kind of going with the same mentality as the Aviators are. But for the Louisville Kings, Chris Redman is going to be their head coach, former NFL quarterback, but probably more known for his time at the University of Louisville, playing quarterback in the 90s. And he does have a bunch of their records still. So he's definitely one of their more successful stories at the quarterback position. Obviously, a little more of a throwback than like Lamar Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater names, but still, nonetheless, it is his first coaching role, pro level coaching role, and it's going to be a role for him to expand into. Again, very similar to Columbus. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, being a new franchise, that's okay.
Next up here for the Orlando Storm, new franchise, familiar face. We have head coach Anthony Becht, previously head coach of the St. Louis Battlehawks, taking a little bit of a move south into Orlando to coach the Storm. Again, he's an experienced spring football leader. We saw him lead that Battlehawks team to no championships, but they had some success. So that was a team that I mean was consistently a staple here. Um, I guess in the XFL/UFL, especially offensively, but kind of brings that mentality down to Orlando.
And our last team that we're going to go over here is the St. Louis Battlehawks. Kyle, you just alluded to Anthony Becht, no longer with them. They did, however, promote internally. They promoted their wide receiver coach from previous seasons, Ricky Prohl, to be their head coach this season. He was a former NFL wide receiver, got the experience, obviously has the pedigree, having worked with some of the guys that they've had come through St. Louis, Hakeem Butler, among some of those names, who's had a lot of success in spring leagues. So it'll be interesting to see him take the step to the head coach level. It's worked for some guys, hasn't worked for other guys. So we'll see how that pans out. And I'm looking forward to seeing what an internal guy can do in St. Louis.
All right, and then to wrap it up here, let's highlight the rule changes that we've seen coming in for this upcoming season. The big one, I would say, the biggest one, we have a 4-point field goal. We have so essentially any field goal from beyond 60 yards is now worth 4 points. Um, Designed to incentivize these long range kicking that especially we see it in the NFL now. It's just like becoming more and more common that these guys with powerful legs are just able to drill these. But also like just imagine watching your team drive down 3 points in the final minute, and then they're like, "All right, cool, we can line up for a field goal to win the game, not just tie it." Brings in a little bit cool late game strategy here. But also, I mean, we've seen few big NFL kickers come in from spring football, from the USFL, from the UFL.
Mhm.
Um, Basically, with these hammers for legs. So I think the UFL is trying to kind of bring that draw into the scoring here.
Yeah, it seems like one of the most clear kind of
Yeah,
like to the NFL pipelines that they got going in the UFL right now is the kickers. I mean, Bates played in the UFL, Aubrey played for the Stallions, Brandon Aubrey, obviously. Even guys like Parker Romo made some stops in the UFL. So it's cool to see that these guys are getting some recognition, some notoriety from for what they're doing during spring football. And again, as you mentioned, Kyle, this is a great way to highlight them because it's so influential to a team now. If you can go out there and you can bang 4 points on the scoreboard for your team, it's a game changer. I know it's only 1 point more than the standard 3 point field goal, but it completely changes the strategy of a game and it almost makes it if you can get into that range and have a guy that can kick that consistently, it almost two of those is more valuable than a touchdown at this point, you know? So it's kind of interesting to put it in that perspective and think about it that way. So kudos to them for kind of highlighting the kickers and one of their key points of this spring football league.
yeah, it's kind of become a staple now where there's several kickers in the NFL coming from these football leagues. It's kind of like the easiest way for these guys both to stay in shape, but also kind of have consistent tryouts for the pros, for the NFL.
Mhm.
Um, Next big one, Zach. I'd love your thoughts on this. They banned the tush push. The QB push sneak is no longer allowed here in the UFL. Trying to really establish a rule here to kind of separate themselves from the NFL. Uh, it seems, especially for this very, very controversial rule.
Yeah, I think I like it. I also think that in the NFL, it's working its way towards probably being banned as well. Prior, when the Eagles were the really like the premier team at doing it, and teams couldn't really stop it, I didn't think that it should be removed because it's like mastering a specific play. It's like Oregon running the read option in the 2010s. It's like you can't just ban it because a
Yeah,
team is so good at it, but now it's becoming there's multiple teams running it. It's not nearly as successful as it once was. And I think to me, it's just kind of leaning towards being more of an injury prone sort of play where you're shortening the lifespan of those
yeah,
poor offensive and defensive linemen that are just absolutely getting crushed every single time they run that play. Obviously, yeah, it's a great way to try to pick up a yard and it's pretty high percentage. But if you're sacrificing the bodies of your offensive and defensive linemen for a single yard, you know, maybe two, three, four times a game. I think that that's something that the league deserves to look at. And UFL obviously decided that that's not something that they
yeah.
want to stand for in their league. So it's again, it's a good kind of trailblazer for the NFL to take a look at. Is it impacting the games in any major way, and should we
Yeah.
really consider doing this as well?
Next big adjustment here, the point after attempt has been reworked again here in this UFL iteration. Previously, there was no extra point kick, where now there is. Again, you score a touchdown, you can attempt a 1 point after attempt kick from 33 yards. You can also do a 2 point attempt from 2 yards out from the 2 yard line, where previously last year was a 1 point attempt, had to be a football play, an offensive football play from the 2 yard line. 2 point attempt was from the five. Um, so now that 2 point attempt from the five is now at the two. So you go for two from the 2 yard line. But they're also sticking with this addition of the 3 point attempt, point after attempt, from the 8 yard line, where that was previously from the 10 yard line.
Yeah, I just happened to look it up while you were discussing there, Kyle, and I could only assume that the reason was that the percentages were too low from where it was prior at the 10 yard line. And just reading through this, I guess Dean Blandino kind of led some of the charge on this. He said from when the ball was at the 5, it had to pretty much exclusively be a pass play because it's too far to
Yeah,
run the ball in. So by moving that up to the 2 yard line, that at least brings the run game back into the mix, which is good. And again, a strategy thing. And then for the 10-yard attempt, it looks like they had about a 30% conversion rate. Um, when they moved that up to the I'm sorry, when they moved the ball up to the 8 yard line, the NFL saw a
oh, okay.
30% conversion rate from that yard line going
Yeah,
into
yeah,
the goal or from 3rd and 8 situations. So I guess that kind of leans towards
yeah,
it being a better option because when from the 10 yard line,
totally.
it must have been a lower percentage than that 30%. So it's a good threshold and a good way to kind of
Yeah,
justify
that's
those
interesting.
adjustments that they're making.
Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
happy you pulled the stats on that because I would have loved to have seen that. I think I'd also like to point out, I mean, I feel like the UFL is trying to really re-emphasize kickers where they weren't kind of doing that previously, where removing the extra point attempt kind of took away those attempts. We're
Hmm.
now bringing that back, kind of allows them
Sure.
to walk away from spring football saying I have a 100% or a high percentage point after attempt, I guess, percentage.
Hmm. Yeah, it's real quick, Kyle. One last point on kickers before we move on. Believe NFL kickers converted 57% of all field goals over 60 yards last season. So, I mean, that's awesome for
Hey, you get a guy
four
who
point
can
play
score you
opportunity.
four
That's all the
points
reason that you need.
on a you hit fourth
Sure.
and 4 and you can hit a 61 yarder. Try it. Go
Right.
for it.
It would be really interesting from like the analytical standpoint to see what are the odds that we're going to convert on 4th and 4 by versus running out our kicker out there to attempt a
Yep.
62 yarder. Like he's got a 53% chance to make this 62 yard field goal, but there's only a 38% chance that we
Yeah.
convert on 4th and 4. You know what I mean? It would be really interesting to and it's I mean that I guess that's the way that these coaches get into analytics, and it's kind of hard
Yeah.
to argue with that sometimes.
The other part here, this final rule reintroduction here, they've added some restrictions to punting. So while we're trying to emphasize kickers, punting's a little bit different. But this is to try to increase a little bit more offensive possessions here. Um, Really, what this is, it's they're restricting punting um, inside opponent territory, except in the final 2 minutes. I think that's more for pace of game for the final 2 minutes there. But
Mhm.
really, what it is if you cross the 50-yard line, you can't punt. Can't punt. Sorry, you either got to go for it or try that 60-yard field goal. It's really again designed to increase offensive possessions. You're eliminating I'd argue the extra 15 yards for a team to choose to punt and take away that extra 30 seconds of playtime from uh, making that punt action and completing that play. But also, you give the offense two more plays essentially, or an extra play. You force them to go for fourth, or you force them to go for
Mhm.
that 4 point play. Um, really just designed to increase total offense, but also a little bit of pace of play here.
Yeah, and it's interesting to also just note that even as soon as that ball is spotted across the 50-yard line, punting is out the window. So if you spot the ball on the 49 and on first down, you hold and you go back to 1st and 20, and then you hold on the next play and you go back to 1st and 30. Because that ball was spotted inside of the 50, you're going. So it's kind of interesting, and I think it's promoting just aggression and downfield play calling on the behalf of these coaches. And it's good. It's good for the league, good for the sport. It's good for spring football in general to kind of have the foot on the gas. And going back to what we talked about at the top of the show, Kyle, it's the emphasis seems to be on excitement and interest
Absolutely.
and high scoring. So this
Yeah,
fits right into that
I mean,
category.
neither one of us wants to watch a 6-3 game we will. I mean, I'd love to, but at the same time, it's like if I'm throwing on a game, that's not the one I want to choose to watch. So this is just kind of trying to avoid that.
I feel like I feel like
We
we
saw
watched a
we got
pretty
it. We got
fair
a few
amount
of
of
those
those
last
last
year.
year
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if I remember correctly, we were going like
Yeah, I
one a
think
week
there
for a
was
little while there.
one. I'm blanking, but it was I feel like our boats were a casualty of that. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
that's why they got the
I'll
X.
miss them. All right. Well, now you're forcing me to look it up here. Scores 2025.
Yeah, I also have it pulled up 12-17, 9-19. Yeah, they just weren't putting 12 to 30. They weren't putting up high point
Yeah,
totals. It wasn't great.
we had a lot of unders going on last year. I think the league
Yes,
wanted to try
that's
to
right.
step away from that. Um, ooh, yeah, 10-9, 11-9.
Mm.
Those are the fun ones.
The old 20-point over under.
Oh boy. But yeah, we're trying to steer away from that. We want more of this. What is this? The 26-22, the 40, 36-18. That was a good one. I remember that one. Unders by blocks.
I mean, in one word,
Hey,
action,
the
right? That's all we
championship
want.
last year was
Action.
58-34. That's what we want. That's what they're going for. They
That's
saw
good
no
stuff.
punts going on
Oh
in
yeah.
that game, and they said, "Let's do that. We gotta put that in the rule. Get punting out of here." All right, we'll wrap it up there. That was kind of a brief introduction. I say brief. We're hitting the 30-minute mark here. Brief reintroduction to the 2026 UFL season after quite a busy offseason here for the league. But right now, it feels like going this year, it feels like 2026 is like a good reset year. We've got some new teams here. We've got some
Mhm.
rebrands. We've got a whole reshifting of coaching and a whole new roster of players across the board. And I'm excited about that. I feel like this is kind of the little recycle that the league needed to kick up some extra hype.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. I'm looking forward to seeing these new teams in action. Lots of new coaches, like we touched on too. A lot of new mentalities and philosophies coming into the league, and it's good. It's good
Zach,
for the league. It's fresh
a
and it's new.
if I had to
So
make
can't wait
a
to break it
bet,
down.
I feel like you're gonna become an aviators guy. Um, who knows?
And aviators.
That's my early guess. If you were to lean somewhere, I feel like you've got a lot of aviator energy coming from you. And maybe it's just Ted Ginn.
here here in here in PA, I mean that would make it that our
The
two
two
teams would be
closest,
the
yeah.
most
I
accessible
mean,
to us then also.
or we hop on a plane to
Yeah.
Disney World and watch an Orlando Storm game.
That
Dude,
blue and
I
orange is talking
that's a
to me. I
pretty
can't I can't lie to you.
combo. I can't lie. The Kings with the green
That's nice.
too. They threw some pretty colors
Mhm.
into these teams. I'm really happy about that. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
remember. Just brief aside. Yeah, I remember you brought it up, but looking at like the team logos, and it was like there's a lot of red here, a lot of red and dark blue.
Mhm.
I don't see that anymore. I'm happy
Mhm.
about it.
No. There's
All
diversity
right.
now. It's good
So
stuff.
that'll do it for this week of UFL Weekly. You can expect this, or the plan right now is for this to be a weekly show on Thursdays, weekly for sure. Thursday release is our plan, but we'll keep you posted if that adjusts. Thank you for tuning in. You can follow us on YouTube, or let me look at this. You can follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, I should say. You can find us there at UFL Weekly. If you are listening to us in podcast form, you can find us on YouTube. Or if you are watching us on YouTube, you can find us on podcast forms. Anywhere you find your podcasts, just search UFL Weekly and you should find us. And I'm also on X, the everything platform, at UFL_weekly. That's where I'm kind of reposting and kind of getting some conversation started on all things UFL over there. So again, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with a 2026 season preview. And then after that, we're previewing week 1. So thank you for tuning in. If you listened all the way through here, let us know who your favorite expansion team is. I'll give my answer next week because I've got a lot to think about here. But again, thank you for tuning in. Talk to you next week.
See you.